Call this meeting to order. With majority present? Yes, we have majority present. Okay. Approve the agenda. The agenda, I passed that to you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have one other item, Madam Chair, and congratulations.
Thank you. My first official in my new duty.
Item 13, it's under new business. That has been on the agenda. Rolland and I reported on that a couple of months ago, and I didn't expect it to be a recurring.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay, so we've already handled that, and that we don't.
Well, it's being handled.
It's being handled, so we don't need.
Either way, it wouldn't be under new business because we've already addressed it.
Fair enough. Do we need to address it at all today?
No.
Okay, so we could just eliminate number item 13, the
Yes.
facility conditioning and indexing? Okay, that saves us 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Any other changes?
That never happens when I don't have a driver.
Just
Always calling
Just let me know when that.
Good to know. All right. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, got that one done. The next thing is, thank you, Tom, we have the minutes for the November 8th meeting. Tom, we're good on that one? So
I got no comments.
you got no
Motion to
comments?
approve.
Motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yay. 2 things done, and we've only been 1 minute into it. That's great. Okay, which did a little bit of revising. When I was talking to Stephanie about it, apparently most of the subcommittees have, committees have a chairperson comment section as well as the liaison, so we added that here. Gives me an opportunity to update you on a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much for participating in my little mini free survey. I was using that since I am just now taking on this role. I wanted to get some feedback from y'all. We've been since April was our first meeting, and I wanted to kind of get a feel for where we were, and moving forward, are we okay? So 100% agreement that Fridays, that's a good time for doing our meeting, so that's good to know. There seems to also be relatively good consensus in terms of format and agenda, some tweaking that we could do, so I'm always interested in feedback in terms of making our meetings better. I'll be happy to share you the rest of that, but mostly it was just for my own edification to make sure I had it. The one thing that was glaringly obvious to me was that the majority of you, at least half, if not majority, depending on how you look at the data, did not feel like you were engaged as much as you want, and I am happy to help you on that one. So we will be looking for opportunities for getting better engagement, and if there's any ideas you have on how you would like to increase your engagement, please let me know. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that, as you are aware, we are 2 down. We have 2 vacancies, with the resignation of Keith being the second one. And I wanted to put that as a top priority of mine, so to get us back up to full staff. And so we have done that. Stephanie and Buddy and I, as a interviewing committee, have done that. And I would like you to introduce you to Diana Valinsky and Ray Lehman. They will be joining us. Officially, they have to be appointed at the board meeting next week, and once that has happened, then they'll be coming on and joining us. So thank you very much, and welcome aboard. And as such, I sent out an email to y'all because we have some openings with the various liaison positions, and y'all had given me some ideas on that. Tom had volunteered for, tell me which one again, was it Trails? Trails, and Rolland, you put your name in to help cover on recreation. Yes. And Diane says that she would be interested in taking over the liaison position of Lakes, obviously after the appointment and all that kind of stuff. Ray does not have one. These are the 2 guys that we need to connect you with to see if one of them would be willing to give up or not in terms of that and divvying up the work.
Yeah,
again,
I'm here to help.
Okay. I'm willing to cede to you the trails.
All of the trails. Wow.
Right.
Okay.
30 miles worth.
Okay, again, obviously there'll be some transition there, but once you get the appointment, then we'll be able to rock and roll. Nothing's done until that official one little piece goes on.
So that means I'm gonna have to go out and start hiking the trails.
Would you like to?
I'll ride your
Just to let you know,
Motorcycle, there you go.
just to let you know, tomorrow at the nature preserve, there is a trails maintenance activity. I will be there, but
Okay.
just to let you know.
Okay, good to know. So those are the only things that I had that I wanted to go ahead and mention to you. That next item, Buddy.
I'll hold off till the end,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
all right, and then Stephanie, any updates or information to share?
The only thing I just maybe wanted to mention, we discussed last week about the O&M tables, and I brought Rolland, he's the one that said, but I want to make sure everybody knew where to find them. The O&M tables in the 2020 budget, so if you go to our website, explorethevillage.com, and click the number of resources, it's under the governance tab under financial reports. So for anybody who's looking to find those, that's where you'll find that. The current updated O&M table. And the 2020 budget with fees and all that stuff too.
Okay, good to know.
I have two things or questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
In reading my favorite newspaper, The Village Voice, one thing that was mentioned was something about replatting Pacifica.
Jody can probably answer
Oh,
that
okay.
question better than I.
Basically, Pacifica was originally set up to be what we call Avila's subdivision, kind of like Madeiras or Isabella, where they have yard maintenance or some type of other maintenance. Due to the fact that there was only 5 houses in that subdivision, they decided that they would rather not participate and just do their own maintenance and do their own irrigation and kind of separate. So in order to do that, we had to replat the limited common property to the owner as a lot and then have them take possession of the whole lot. So we've only been working on it, I think, a year. And I think up until we got the permit from the ACC, we thought we were there, but we are very close to getting that done. And then they'll just be a lot like any other
Okay.
lot in Hot Springs.
So the replanning was more an issue of responsibility and not lot lines.
Not lot
Okay.
lines.
All right.
It was just instead of being maintenance, they wanted to do their own, so we gave them a limited common.
So it kind of takes it from what the traditional townhome kind of an
Right.
area, so that limited common property,
Okay.
then becomes.
All right.
Yeah.
The other thing's a small enough neighborhood that every owner agreed.
Right, there's only
And
5
that's
owners,
a big
so
hurdle.
well, I guess 6 owners with us, but, yeah, there was only, and it works better for them.
Okay. The second issue was, it's not really an issue. You're heading up this Coronado Center engagement process where you're kind of looking at possibilities for what you might be able to do.
I'm actually not heading it up, Stacy
Or-
is, but I'm participating with her in her team. But yes, what it is to get community input, basically, for the future of that facility, the Coronado Center building. You know, the utilization has really declined over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and just trying to figure out what's the best use for it, what's going to re-engage people with that space, and does it remain a rental center? You know, because primarily that's what we do. We rent rooms for whatever, and so basically talking to the shoreliners that live near there, the people that use it today, as well as like the townhouse area there, the people that kind of surround it, and then so kind of taking again steps to engage people from different points of view,
Okay.
get their ideas.
Because the CMP itself kind of hit the Coronado Center fairly hard in terms of future development. Is there any connection between?
There is.
Okay.
So Stacy's very much focused on the Coronado Center building itself. My role in it would be to focus on the area at large. So really basically from the fuel stop, from Valeric all the way back. And so starting some of that as well. And I've met with some of the property owners there, the church leadership, and some of the commercial business owners there to just talk about what what does the POA do, what can, what would help them in their business ventures, what would make them more successful. And, but it's just a slow process of basically information gathering at this time.
Okay. I mean, I was kind of thinking in terms of, we were trying to find a project to be subject to a project management process, and I was just wondering
No, that's a good idea.
if that was a possible candidate.
I think that's a great idea. I think we should,
Then it's something I think that
Yep.
Nikki is really
yeah, I think that's a great
the
idea.
lead point, so.
I mean, it really truly is at the heart of like you said, the comprehensive master plan. I mean, that particular project, and you're right, that was what the consulting team called out as priority number one.
Okay.
Basically look at the existing neighborhood centers and what is good about them, what is not so good, what is making them thrive, or in some cases, why are they declining? And
Okay.
yeah, and that was number one.
Okay. Well, with that, that particular subject, I'm just punting to you. So.
I
But that's a good
appreciate
idea.
that catch.
That's a good idea.
The Recreation Committee Monday, of course, they had one of those sessions, a contact
Yeah.
session before. They listed a number of groups like shoreliners, users, and they mentioned the library. And I said, okay, so I'm a big library person, how do I find out about it? And they said they were going to send a notice out
To all the people with a library
to
card.
everybody that had a library card. But how about the general public? Are you publishing that in the?
They just haven't gotten to the public yet, the public at large, so they were really focusing, again, like small groups, small sessions, so that it wasn't a giant, big town hall. There were more little round table sessions, so 30 to 40 people in a room instead of 300 to 400 in a room, to try to get a little more one-on-one input. So yes, we will end up going out to the public at large, but right now it's kind of people that are most closely associated with that building.
Anything else?
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, let's go on to item number 7. Since went from vice chair to chair, we need a new vice chair. Buddy, you can help us with this.
We open the nomination for vice chair of this committee. Your nominations, anybody nominate?
I would like to nominate Mr. White.
Second.
Second, motion made and second. Any more?
You didn't even give any option, did you?
Any more?
Here's the opportunity, Rolland.
Do I hear a motion to make it by acclamation?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I
You're the new
Congratulations,
vice
Vice Chair.
decided to.
Oh, okay, I was late.
Roland, you have to move from there up to here now.
I got so much junk to move.
Next time, next time.
I talk enough over here.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate that. Okay, hitting the old business, item number 8, the CMP implementation tables.
So, look at this fancy new screen we have, y'all. It's cool. This is my first time to see it also. Over here a little bit. So Nikki and I have been working on, as you know, we owe you guys an update to the implementation tables. And staff is digging in. We're digging in. We met yesterday. Renee was in that meeting as well. And we had a great session with all of our executive team. And we should have something back, actually, for us to give to you guys for a quick look in maybe early January. But I wanted to talk about just the formatting of the document itself. So if you've got your comprehensive master plan with you, just flip it to the implementation table section, which is section 8, I think, back in the back.
There, James.
Got it?
Yes.
So you can see the format that we have today, which is really basically the elements and the sections and the recommendation and so forth. And what we've added, and a big thank you to Nikki, because she's helped me a lot with figuring out how to do this and teaching me some very neat tricks on Excel, which is really
Gotta love Excel.
Love it. So what we added are the 4 enterprise goals to the
Wait
document.
a second.
Okay.
Hold on. Let's
Okay.
not, we're struggling.
Still looking,
How
okay.
about 257 is one of them?
To what?
257 is one.
254.
257.
I just turned the beginning of the budget and finances.
I got it.
You've got some of them there. There you go.
There we go.
Okay. So we thought it would be a good idea to map each recommendation back to the enterprise goal and sort of get a sense of, does it support, does the work that we're going to attempt to do support our corporate goals? And we didn't really have that as a mechanism in the original document. So we've added that and basically given, drop-down boxes within each where we can either say that, that particular recommendation, it either strongly aligns or moderately aligns, slightly aligns, or doesn't align at all with that particular goal. Then we can run reports off that. We can sort them by the things that are most relevant to the goal, least relevant, etc. So that's one change that we're recommending in this next iteration.
Is this Excel or?
It's Excel, yeah. And then the description, we're not changing that obviously, but while I say that, we're reviewing it now. In some cases, it's just unclear or a little hazy about what really the meat of the recommendation was in the internal document. So again, we kind of went through that with our staff yesterday. They go back, read the section, make sure that the details in this particular cell, if you will, are inclusive enough to get a sense of what we're really trying to do. I guess that's a good way to say it. And then moving to the right, the original document had a responsible party, but we've added a responsible party and then who that person is assigning the work to. So maybe that I'm the responsible party, but I'm going to assign it to one of my staff members, and so we're kind of tracking it that way. If there's a committee involved that would have some input into actually making that work, so added that, that's a new column. We've added, and I've done this actually since you and I talked, Nikki, but targeted start date. Before we just had, what did it say before? Start date? Timeline. It said timeline. So basically we've changed timeline to targeted start date, a targeted completion date, and an actual completion date, so once we actually get it done. There is a dependency column, and that would track back to if accomplishing that particular recommendation in the table is dependent on something else in the plan happening, then we would note that there. That this can't be done alone. There's other work that has to be done in order for this thing to happen. And then status, did we have that before? I think we did have status, right?
Yes.
We did not have status.
Well, we put some status information in the timeline, so now we have those separate.
And so we just, we've got it, as complete, in progress, not started, postponed. We may tweak that a little bit, not knowing, there may be a couple, what was one of the terms we used yesterday, Renee? I can't remember.
I'm sorry.
For the status, it was,
Postponed
we had that.
or ongoing or not applicable.
Maybe it was not.
We're gonna add on
I think I remember, or something, if as we continue to walk through this, again, the idea is not to necessarily eliminate things from the table, but they may become less relevant.
Yeah, or no
not
longer
relevant at
applicable.
all, or something like that. So anyway.
Yeah, I think we said we were gonna say if it didn't apply any longer, we're no longer applicable.
Okay.
Okay.
And then of course our notes section so that we can go back through. But one of the things, of course, that's great about Excel is you can add all these fun little drop-down boxes. So, we can, let me go back. For an example, I only want to look at the things that are applicable to me. I could, go down here and find, and then I'm only going to see the items within the table that I need to focus my attention on. So it makes it much easier for our staff to use and navigate and manage as well. So that's where we are. Like I said, we're working on it. We also worked on a timeline yesterday, which I have not typed up. I know you'll be anxious to see that, but a timeline. So knowing that this is an annual review and that this is something that this committee needs in order to do their work to inform us and make recommendations on budget, etc. So I have that as well, and I will have that out to you guys pretty quickly. I just didn't have time to type it up.
So one of the things that Stephanie and I had talked about was, I know we've been waiting to get the actual updates for the various different things, but we knew that if we truly wanted to use these implementation tables to be a mechanism for us to track and report and all that kind of stuff, if we were going to make changes structurally to the format, it didn't really make sense for them to go ahead and put input, knowing that we were going to change the format, which would require additional inputs that weren't originally in the first request. That was going to be double work for them. So this has kind of been a parallel effort, but what I think we finally came to the consensus is we don't have time to do double work. We need to go ahead and get this kind of agreed to and finalized and tweaked, and then ask them to fill it in based on the new format.
And I just think truly as a tool to monitor our success. Are we actually doing some work? I think we can use this. There's reporting that we can do based on some of the new information. I know Nikki created just kind of a quick report here on, I can see a little more. Kind of just tracking back to the goals, how many of the recommendations that are filled in, not all of those are filled in, just so I think, in fact, only mine. But how many of them have a strong alignment to our goals? How many of the things that I'm working on strongly align to a particular goal or not so much or whatever? Just tools to help us better plan our work program, budgeting, what are we going to focus our attention on, and those kinds of things. So I think we're in the right direction, but certainly willing to hear any thoughts that you might have about changing or adding to.
The voice has a question.
Yeah.
Is this just an internal document, or is this available to members?
No, it's absolutely available to members. It is a part of the comprehensive master plan.
Okay, so it just expands within the comprehensive master plan.
That is correct. But it will update every single year, so it'll end up being like an appendix or appendice of the document. So
Okay, so it won't be an ongoing thing that the public can see.
it'll be on the website all the time,
Okay,
just like
But
our
only
O&M
updated.
tables, just like the
but
comprehensive.
you're
It's
going
on
to
the.
update it once a year?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
It'll be updated once a year. And it is part of, the comprehensive master plan was adopted as a governing document, just like a policy is, and just like charters and those kinds of things, bylaws. So anytime we make a change, the board has to approve it, and then it becomes a part of the governing document. So we're working it through their, what's the calendar kind of called? What's it called? Green?
The evergreen calendar.
Evergreen calendar. It's going to be kind of basically part of their annual evergreen calendar. Questions? Any other questions?
For those of you who had a chance to take a look at the various different implementation tables, were there any other pieces of information that you were hoping that we could get or needed to refine in some way?
Nice job. A lot of information in there, actually.
Yeah, one of the things that we realized real quick is there's no way that this is going to fit on an 8.5 by 11. It's going to be digital. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not.
We can hide columns and change stuff that, only do what needs to be printed if we want to print a copy, but it's just not a lot of information, so.
I'm obviously going to have to get a different or bigger or some kind of computer.
Yeah. Do you not use Excel?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I don't use this version.
okay.
You just need a bigger monitor.
You just need this one.
You live off the wall of the police academy.
That'd be bigger in my room, so.
So just like the O&M tables that are updated every year in the budget process, this will be updated every year too, and so we just haven't had.
Joe, when can we expect a copy of
Um,
you distributed?
January
Let
1st.
me, pretty much in January,
Okay.
February timeframe. I'll get the calendar out that shows you like exactly when staff starts and when, we have it all down. I just haven't typed it up yet. Yeah. We took a bit of time yesterday going through that exactly. When do we start updating? When does it hit you so that you have an opportunity then to make your notes and comments? When does it hit the board's new business agenda? When does it hit the board's old business agenda? And then when is it published? Because it's a published document. So it basically kind of starts, I think we started like November timeframe-ish, November, and hitting you guys in January, February, so that it hits board approval by April, which starts the budget cycle every year. Does that make sense? That's kind of how we're doing.
And you will continue to be the gatekeeper of the documents, so when any changes or updates
Right.
are funneled through you.
Yeah, she's the only one that.
Yeah, I'm the only one that will make any changes to that.
Version control is going to be critical.
Right. And we'll probably always, in fact, there's a master copy there. We'll probably always keep that master and then have a working tab so that we never lose what was passed. We'll always keep, a version.
A baseline
A
version.
baseline version, yeah.
I mean, that's just good risk mitigation. What happens if this file gets corrupted for whatever reason? You'd like to know that you have backup. Nobody wants to recreate all that kind of work. That's pretty nasty.
And then the next step, of course, and we're still kind of walking through that as well, is the actual new information that would be incorporated into it. All we're talking about right now is updating what's existing, but things that come up, new work plans, new, whatever, things that we can't even imagine today. How will those be incorporated into the tables? Because they can't be incorporated into the tables until they're incorporated into the book through observations and recommendations and all of the, stuff.
We'll try to provide you with a lot of new stuff.
Actually, that's one of the things that, as far as a project, that's one of the things that I'm going to recommend that we take on another place to get more engaged. I mean, I think we're already working on a little bit, but we got a little more direction yesterday about something this committee can really take on as a project to figure out, okay, who, what, how, when, to get this started.
All right.
Yeah.
One of the issues I think that mystified us was the ongoing,
And the timeline?
in the timeline. What discussions did you people have? What conclusions did you come to?
That we're not going to use that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what did you?
I think at that time, some of those things were actually just ongoing. They were in process, if you will. And so it just hasn't, we haven't updated it since April
No.
of 2018.
18.
I
Yeah.
don't think that was the meaning of that. You may disagree, the meaning was that you're gonna do it continuously.
Oh, it's a never-ending process? I mean,
Well,
that
Keep track,
particular
this
item.
just takes tasks, keep track of how many houses have been sold, that's probably not one of these tasks. That's something that go down as ongoing, because you're gonna do it continuously, and at least that's the way I interpreted a lot of those
Well,
tasks.
a lot of the ongoing things also, you do nothing until a trigger event occurs, and then that notifies you that you should look at that one box, but I don't see how you went from the trigger event occurring to somebody saying, oh, we gotta look at line 292.
Tom, I can help a little bit because several of the tasks that are under my purview, they are ongoing. So if I have something that is a 5-year, in a suspension strategy or something like that, it is ongoing through that entire 5 years. And that's not meaning that until the 5th year I'm not doing anything. There's constant work on it through all of those years. So yeah, it's in progress at all the time.
But there's some things that are listed as ongoing, like, for example, golf. They're always having something that's
Yeah.
going related to it. But if you think about it from a budget point of view, we want to do X this year. So we would want to change it and make it more specific in the wording to say, X is in this year, Y is in next year, so that we could go and do the mapping to the budget.
Yeah.
If, at the highest level, yes, it's ongoing, because we're always doing it. But this year is what we're planning to do this. So.
Shut up,
Timing.
That's a cool one.
that's what I know.
Yeah, that's flat.
Sorry about that. I go to a meeting where
Turn
that
his
happens,
phone.
they all sing happy birthday.
Would you like us to say something?
No, thank you. This is in governance, it's
What page?
151, page 255. And it just says regularly audit ACC and board decisions to ensure they're in line with policies. And it's not us, it's government subcommittee. And that's an ongoing.
So
And
that's
the kind of thing. I think
perpetual kind of
It's
thing.
it's a perpetual,
Right.
we're gonna do this
Okay.
every
Maybe
once in a
that's a good
while, every
word.
few years, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe a different word is better, perpetual or,
Well, if it's an annual or quarterly or monthly thing, maybe.
that's true too.
Philosophically, though, if we're talking about a CMP being a 25 to 30-year plan, do you really want something as a recommendation that is not only now, but going to go on? How does that play into how are we going to change from where we are now to where we're going to be in the future? Does something like that actually belong as a recommendation versus being in operation?
Don't know.
That's a philosophical question. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
another one is encourage higher density housing development, such as within the town center, well.
So you're right. Those are just kind of always. They're just
They're kind of always
you're
things.
always doing it. Yeah. I think
That
as
should be part of your DNA, I would think.
well, I think that's some of the work that this group is going to do. When you get to your section discussion, I think that's where those kinds that can happen. Where we start talking about, okay, this is the details of this section. What do we recommend keeping in there or moving out towards? This is really more of an operational kind of a thing, not so much CMP or.
I mean, part of the trouble is, ongoing meant different things
Yeah.
to the different line items. So it
there's
was
not
just
consistent-
not a useful label.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a good point. I think that this is our opportunity to change.
well, I mean, I like what you said, which is, don't use that word, because it's just not a good
Yeah.
timeline descriptor.
I know in the protective covenants, we have a section of definitions too. When there is something that could be construed differently depending on who's reading it, maybe it's good to have a section that, we define it. This is what it means. Okay.
Because of the 271 recommendations, something like 90 of them were ongoing, which is huge,
Which makes it very difficult to measure,
Right.
quantitatively measure, what progress are we making on that particular one. Okey dokey, anything else on that one? Stephanie? Okay, any other questions? Okay, so the next one, I just put a generic, we have various different subcommittees. Is there anyone who has anything that wants to report out on anything for their subcommittee, standing or otherwise?
Today I'm going to submit to you the summary of findings that the marketing subcommittee has created after many, many months of data gathering, researching, whatever. And we're going to submit that to you, the chair,
Okay.
as the process goes. The chair provided a modified, edited version of the marketing subcommittee's summary of findings, which you indicated would be the acceptable version, that our version would not be acceptable. The marketing subcommittee has unanimously agreed that the modified version just doesn't reflect either the body of work of the committee nor a true picture of the marketing as it existed until July of 2019. We feel that this document is really important as a benchmark for the village marketing going forward. So we are going to submit our version as we wrote it, as we all agreed was appropriate, and then it's up to you.
Okay, I'm a little confused because there's two documents. There's the recommendations not included, and then there's the findings.
Right, this is the findings.
That's the findings, okay. All right. All right, we'll go ahead and submit it to me, and now we'll take it from there.
Will do.
All right, any other committees?
Well, actually, we got on the development, we did, as I said before, a couple items that we think ought to be, say, with Public Works that are on our list, and a couple more with marketing. And I was just going to plan to email the chairman of those subcommittees and say, we think these ought to be in your bailiwick, and tell me if you think I'm wrong. And then that's not affected by this. It doesn't affect this, I don't think, because the subcommittee's not listed up there, the files that I know of, so.
Well, that is a column that we are, the committee support, that column is there. I think that's one of the intents, remember when we started that spreadsheet, we were trying to figure out which committee should be mapped to what one. I think that's a cross-check and verify to make sure that, just because we think you own it, you have to agree that, yes, I own it.
Well,
So-
and we look at the list you sent, you and Keith sent us, when you set that up a little bit, and we looked at it, as a cross-check, we think some of these other look wrong a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, they're not big deals.
Okay, just, would you CC me on this so I'm aware of it? 'Cause
Oh,
I
yeah, I'll
think
CC you, and I'll probably CC Stephanie. Who should I CC, just to make sure it doesn't mess us up?
Me.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so we can just see if we can, because I think I'm the keeper of that spreadsheet, and I just want to make sure it's current.
That's just a cleanup thing, really.
Yep, okay. And then once we have this, then we can sync it up to make sure we're all in agreement, because then we don't need that spreadsheet, because it'll be in here. Okay, any others? Okay,
Now, this is an addition to the CMP, or does it modify the CMP, or?
It replaces what you're looking at in it. So
Okay.
that section 8, just like the O&M tables are in that, and we've got a new version now, the 2020 version.
Yep.
This will be the 2020 version of the implementation tables. And every single year it will change. We'll insert the next iteration.
Have we confirmed how, let's say this committee were to add something to the CMP? Has that been addressed yet?
Nope, that's what we're getting ready to talk about next.
yeah, that's the next thing on our agenda.
Or take something out.
Yeah, I
Or
think
do
that's the
something.
next item on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. I'm just finish making my note here. All right, anything else from the subcommittees? Okay, good. Next item on the agenda is, last time we had opened the door to say, hey, we know that this is a 25, 30-year document. It is absolutely reasonable that this is going to need to be updated. What does that update process look like? And so I've been working with Stephanie trying to kind of figure out in high strokes what that is, regardless of who is doing it, although it would seem logical that we would be involved. I'm not sure if we would be responsible for, but we would certainly be involved or playing oversight role in any updates for the CMP document itself. And what does that look like? So you want to, I guess, just hook up your computer? Let me get that file up real quick.
Do you want to save on that flash?
Yeah, that's a possibility too. Do you care where I put it?
Nope. I'm just a dumb.
Oh, there you are. Okay, never mind. I was saying, what did that happen there? Okay, so we have, trying to make sure I get the most recent one. Okay.
What's it called? Change process flow?
Change process flow sounds awfully similar. Yes.
Where do you see
I
it?
just,
Those big.
CMP change process flow for this one. And I don't know what page it's open to, so I'm about to find out. Oh, one. That's good.
Okay. Jump in.
Oh, you want me to jump in?
I do.
Okay. So wherever, a possible request for a change to the CMP could come from anywhere. The board could come up with something, a committee could come up with something, staff could come up for something, there could be a regulation, something that we have to take into consideration. But regardless of what it is, we need to document it. And I'm thinking some kind of change request form, being in my project management head, but whatever it is, there'll be a form. And then we will receive it. Of course, it all has to be determined who's going to play lead roles, but I'm assuming that we're going to be starting that process. And our first question we need to ask is it CMP? Some things that could be requested have nothing to do with the CMP, others may. So if it does, great, we'll move forward. If it's not, then we refer to the appropriate party, probably a staff person who would be responsible for that area.
Nikki, that criteria is just our opinion?
No, I actually have a list of criteria. It's in a Word
Is that the
document.
criteria we're gonna
Yes.
measure it against? Because there's nothing in the CMP that I know of.
Well, some things are just, is it big and is it strategic? Is it 30 years away? I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
if it's a day-to-day something that we have to do, then it's not really CMP, it's
Okay.
operational.
Okay, so we'll have some kind of criteria. to
Yes,
measure it
yes, some very, very broad, but yeah, some kind of criteria. And then let's go ahead and start some kind of tracking mechanism. So we know from the minute it hits the door until the minute we close it out, whatever that looks like, we're keeping track of it, we don't lose anything. Then at that point, we'll refer it, depending on what kind of request it is, we're going to refer it to either the staff or the board to take a look at it. And they're going to take a look at that and they have a decision to make. Do they want to pursue it or don't they? If they want to pursue it, they go down one path. If they don't want to pursue it, then go down another path.
You got that reversed. It goes to staff first, then the board.
It would always
this
go,
is- Well, this is just you, not the board.
Okay.
This is just me or you as the
Oh,
liaisons to
okay.
this group.
yes, the liaison, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And if they don't want to pursue it, then we'll just shut it down at that particular point, update the tracking and close it. If they do want to pursue it, then we go from the identification stage down to the next stage, which is we need to flesh it out a little bit. So we have to develop some kind of submission proposal, start doing some of the homework related to it, give us some idea of tracking milestones. Where do you think you're going to be? And I don't know what work is going to be involved there. Do we have to do research? Do we have to do a survey? Do we need to collect data? Do we need to interview? Whatever. There could be lots of different things that we can do it. But we're going to be trying to track it. So once in a while we need to nudge them and says, hey, how's it going on such and such? Where are you? Because we thought you were going to be at this point. You said you were going to be at this point by this point. Just, it's going to be flexible, but give us a way to say, hey, we could reopen the conversation. In some cases, depending on what the topic is, we may need to hold public forums to get input from the property owners or a variety of different people who may have a vested interest in it to find out what it is. And that could be some rewrites and revisions, et cetera. But eventually, somebody has to take a look at it. It will probably be the liaison again who says, okay, is this submission proposal complete? If it's not, it cycles through until we can finally say, yes, it is. And then it will go to the liaison at that particular point, and that's when it comes to us, we'll review it.
Now, who's going to do these first steps? You going to like a little subcommittee of this group?
I think the liaison will probably designate somebody, whether it's staff, board, committee,
We don't
somebody.
know. The answer is you guys can help us figure that out.
Yeah, this is very high level.
Yeah, the first three vertical ones, the question is,
I mean, you're right, because I mean, not only that, I mean, there isn't some authorship that has to happen, right? I mean, it's going to go into the document, and the way it's laid out, we have, it's consistent how each section's laid out, so you have to write it. We have to write that. So does that writing come from this group? Does it come from whoever's submitting it to this group to review, or?
And that's a very important point that we didn't discuss on this, is you want it to have a familiar and common voice. And different people have different styles, and that translates into feeling different or having a different voice. So that is something we may have to consider at some point. At that one point or another, the CMPAC will review the submission, and then, according to Robert's rules, will make a motion to approve it, and it will either pass or to fail. And you notice that I put a little asterisk next to certain things, and that's when we'd update that particular request had made a certain milestone on the tracking form. If it doesn't pass, then we go ahead and close it down at that particular point, but it could pass, and if it fails, we close it down. If it passes, we'll continue on to the next stage, which is it has to go through appropriate reviews. Needs to go through the governance committee or CEO or whatever's appropriate based on what kind of change we're looking at for the CMP. What we hope is that we'll get an okay to go and proceed to board approval. If not, then there may be some, redlining, marking up, and additional information, et cetera, whatever that is. And any changes would then have to go through another review of the appropriate body, whether it's the governance committee or the CEO review, et cetera. But eventually, we would want to have at the point where the board would approve it, and in that case, we have the motion would approve, and then here's where some of this is a little loosey-goosey. How often are we going to submit a potential change to the CMP? If we're only going to rewrite it once a year, do we want every month having an agenda item on the board docket? And I think the answer is no. I think we need to package them up and maybe do a quarterly review, saying we have 3 this quarter, we have 0 this quarter, we have 18 this quarter.
And there's another philosophy that, in fact, we talked about it yesterday. Is we have a 3-year budget, right? With a 3, so on there may be a 3-year, even, and maybe even less frequently than that. You're constantly monitoring it, looking at it, but as far as full out new revision and a reprinting and all of that kind of stuff, it may be
Less frequent?
maybe. I mean, I think this group needs to talk through. I think we need to talk about it. There's an awful lot to this that needs an awful lot of discussion. Yeah.
One question was, can this die at the governance committee CEO? Your arrow says, I guess your arrow goes down. If it's no, you return it for corrections. But
If it never gets past that point, then it'll just close again, and we're done. It won't be part
so
of it.
that an arrow goes off, says no.
Yeah, that's where we have it, that the motion would basically be denied, and then you see it go to the left that it would close at that point. So, but anything that is saying, yes, it needs to be updated.
I see what you're saying.
I would definitely say though but I mean, I'm not trying to speak for the board, but I can't imagine the board wanting multiple requests to be on the agenda for comprehensive master plan changes. I mean, it's either annually or less frequently than that.
All the more reason why we have to have some kind of mechanism to gather all that together, whatever it is, and when it's ready, then at the designated time, we go ahead and present it. And all this is going to feed into the timeline, because if we're going to do an update to the CMP, well, wouldn't they want the most updated version of it to influence priorities, objectives, budget, all that kind of stuff? And there are some ramifications to that. So we collect all this information in some kind of proposed possible revision list, goes on to the next step. Now we have to do the work. And the work is, literally you have all the content in the various different sections where it says the observations, the recommendations, etc. That wordage has to change. And then there's going to be recommendations where, so all these implementation tables, which potentially would have to be updated as well. And then if it has a time horizon of less than 3 years, well, that's the horizon for the O&M tables. They would have to be updated. And then there has to be some kind of review, critique, evaluation to make sure it's complete, accurate, etc. And then when we have it all done, then we're going to put the red line version of the CMP together, and that's what the board would approve.
There's your last.
Oh, we have another one?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was done. Never mind, okay.
One more stage.
Yes, I'm on the board.
All right, I was wondering why y'all were looking at me. You were waiting for me to say something. Okay, so now we actually have the red line version that has to go. We're going to check it to make sure we think it, assuming again that we're providing oversight on that. Whoever it is, somebody needs to review this to make sure it's as complete and ready to go before the board. The board will get it so that they could do their review. It's a new business item 1 month. The idea is that the next month it would be old business. That gives them their 30 days to take a look at it and we can work with them, etc. And then it would get approved. And once the red line version is approved, then we'd actually prepare it and we would publish the new version of the CMP. Or they don't approve it, they hate everything that we did, and we're just going to say, no, we're not revising it, and we shut it down. I guess that's also an option. I hope after all of this work it would not be, but that is a possibility. So flowchart-wise, I had to include it. Does this sound reasonable? Logical? Any major holes that I'm missing?
Do we have any idea how long this process would take?
All year?
It looks long.
It's ongoing.
It would be ongoing.
It's your version.
So what I think happens is,
So I think he's asking, are you asking for like if a revision comes in from start to finish, how long would it take to get through this process?
It looks long.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, when I was with the Lakes Committee, as an example. There were a couple of things that we saw that I thought ought to be added to the CMP simply so that we all know that, yes, they're going to do this and it's approved in the, it's something simple. It adds, income to the PO, just something that, so that we all know, yes, we're doing this kind of thing. To me, something that ought to be reviewed in a little bit of nothing and put in, I'm concerned as long as this is, or as it sounds, and it's a beautiful job. That is how someone would think through it. But how long, can that be done in 3 or 4 weeks, or is it?
it could be days. If it's a little thing, it could be a lot longer if we have to do it.
So we think there would be a way that small things could get inserted pretty quick.
Well, yes and no. I think that the process of coming through and checking all the boxes could be relatively small. But I don't think we're going to update I don't think anybody thinks that the CMP will be updated anytime there's one little change. We'll do a batch load. We'll collect all those and say, okay, this was one, put it aside, put it in the bucket. When 3 others come in, we'll put it in the same bucket. And then once a year, we're going to open the bucket, put all those together, and then say, here, board, this is what we believe needs to go into the next version.
The reason why I bring this up is because I think our public needs to know what we're doing, that the CMP is changeable, and that we are making changes. And I think, again, one of my things I've been after all along is I think better communication with the public. We need to show them that this is a living, breathing document. It's not our plan, and that we are doing what has been envisioned, which is for neighbors, citizens, us, that we're involved in doing our job.
I
And
haven't
speaking
thought
for
about,
them.
I haven't thought about including in the flow somewhere, like little mini charrette type project each year where we actually bring people back and say, we want your input. You know, maybe something that we haven't necessarily thought of, right? You know, kind of reopen that door so that the community has an opportunity to stay engaged in the document.
Clint, not knowing what it is that you're talking about for the lakes, in a lot of cases, the committees, you mentioned financial advantage to the POA. In a lot of cases, if you bring that up in that meeting and the chairman that takes it to the staff, that goes on, works at it pretty quick. But if you're talking about something that changes the CMP, then that's a different process.
It's not so much, I'm not talking about things that change the CMP, but things that need to be included, I think, so that it shows it's a more inclusive document. And also, there again, back for the education of the public, that they see that you know, people who are interested in lakes or golf or whatever, they want to see that we are recognizing those needs and that those needs are being implemented. And that's the thing that I think, you know, will help answer some of these folks who are out there who they don't like the CMP, they're against it, and you know that they say, wait a minute, this is a good thing. That's the thing I'm getting at. And I think the faster that we can communicate to them, the better we all are, the more likely we all come together as a team.
Do you think that's where we could spend some time defining the criteria?
Yeah, I just...
Maybe to help understand these are the types of things that we should be thinking that makes sense to go into the CMP or...
Everything we can do to educate people, you know, whereas, I mean, we all know how many people have read this
Outside of this room?
outside of this room? Very little. And there are some people who've said, oh, this is awful, and they beat it up, and they do all of those things, and they've never read it. But if we're coming to them and we're saying, look, we are doing things. These are the good things that are happening. We're making the changes. You know, we listen to the public, and we realize, we're not really ready for that just yet. Or here's another way to handle it that's better. And then it gets publicized, and they don't have to read the CMP. They hear about it. That's what I think is important. More communication.
Good point.
I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, but the CMP to me lives two lives. It's a book with really big ideas with the 30-year time horizon, and buried in this book are the implementation tables, which are very granular and have very short time frames. Now, when you're talking about these small ideas, they're just kind of line items in the implementation tables, which they're in the CMP, but they're really at that point beyond this group, they are in the hands of staff to execute. So when we say update the implementations every year, the implementation tables every year, I don't know yet what this group's role is in controlling what goes in and what doesn't go in that, because we haven't done it yet.
In the implementation tables?
The implementation tables itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fooling around with the big ideas of the CMP, we haven't crossed that bridge yet. But the implementation tables themselves are hugely active. I mean, things are being worked on right now. We don't have a process yet for inserting things or, monitoring them. But I think that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And way at the beginning, the second box, it says, is this an operational issue? If it is, it goes to staff. Otherwise, this group starts to work it over. I mean, many of the small items that you're talking about might just go straight to staff. We just might look at it and say, that's really an operational thing.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is I
Yeah.
think that's the kind of, yes, I call it what are the adds and subtractions.
Mhm.
And what I'm getting at is that we need to, I feel, we need, this committee needs to communicate that to the public so that the public knows there are changes to the CMP. These changes, that the CMP is a living document, that their input to us is having an effect. And
So we need to make sure that piece is clear, maybe some of the, in the steps.
just so we can communicate what we're doing. And that helps us too, that we see, aha, we got that one checked off, and we got this one checked off. And I think that's what we're about.
Good point.
And I think also the tracking mechanism, whatever, and I'm thinking spreadsheet because it's just so easy, but whatever the mechanism is, if somebody comes back and says, what have you done for us lately, we could pull that and say, hey, these are the things that we are evaluating. Open, in progress, closed, accepted.
And I hope that's
rejected.
what the voice would and others that they would see, we're doing our job. And hopefully encourage more people to come and be a part of this committee and be a part of the subcommittees. Because the beauty of this place is that we have so many committees, so many subcommittees, people who are involved, care about golf, lakes, tennis, all of these things. And that's what makes the village great. And we've got to continue that. But we've got to educate in order to make sure everybody's on board.
Okay, fair enough.
Good point.
Any other comments? I mean, again, we've just been trying to draft this through and also take into consideration what governance looks like and all that, and what's practical. We haven't obviously figured out who is going to be doing what, but I think that was an aha moment for me at our last meeting, which says, here we have a document that's supposedly for 30 years, and we do not have a process that paves the way for doing the updates, whatever that looks like. So I think this is a start.
Why don't we, Nikki, send these out to this group so that
Okay.
they have time to process it, because that's a lot to take in, and just, if,
I'll
and
take
really
that.
think about it from your own point of, like, if you were walking through it, where have we missed or stumbled, to your point, where can we add some elements in that will make sure we're doing our job of education?
It's not big changes, but just small changes. Things that, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to, another thing is to give credit to these folks, the committees. Lakes is a wonderful one where the POA staff and the members of the committee, the villagers, and they work terrifically together.
They do, yeah.
They really do. And they have great ideas. Well, those are the kind of things that everybody needs to know about. That, this is a part of the CMP. The CMP works. This is what the whole, that we're all working toward a plan.
Right. Probably realistically, the sections that are in the document now are probably the sections that need to be in the document. So it's really taking what's existing information, reviewing it, and modifying to, what's working today or is not working today. What should we be, what did we not think about in 2017 when we were putting this together that we would be thinking now in marketing or in health or in, whatever the issue is that's already been identified in there, but maybe just needs clarification or added to. Might just need, might be added to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as you go, as this annual kind of review by section and what you're doing with the group there, kind of reviewing section by section, I think that's when those things will come to light.
And I think that you bring up a good point that I think that it would probably be good for us to review the CMP, whatever's come in terms of potential changes. And at some point, what's that tipping point that says, okay, we have enough changes that we've identified, we need to reprint, we need to release new. We may only have a couple of little tweaky things, and there's a couple of typos, but do we really need to reprint the whole thing just because of that? Or do we have an addendum that says an errata form that here, note that on page there's a typo, and just have that little one pager that we add to it versus doing a full reprint. But I think we need to have a definition of what constitutes enough that we say, yes, we need to go ahead and reprint versus no, we could do a one pager that says here are the tiny things that we're changing this year.
Yeah, printing is likely not gonna happen often at all.
No,
I mean,
no,
I
but
would say-
electronic, yeah,
Huh?
But it's an actual governing document.
right.
So reprinting with any change you make will always be done at least once for the public copy that's available at the office.
Yeah.
Because it is a governing document.
Okay.
But as far as like printing new and binding and all of that stuff, that's just, like she said, we would do one for the public, for our people, we have to have that, but
This form, this work is excellent, especially in situations where we've talked about where we're going to come up to some big changes. They're talking about the changes happening in the boomer generation and who's doing what, and nationally, what are the interests. This gives us a perfect roadmap to walk it through, not just a little item, but a super big item where we're going to change something that's
philosophical changes,
exactly.
right, that really change our.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion to support this or not? How do you care?
This is new, no, this is old business, so I guess we could, what motion were you thinking about?
Just a motion for acceptance and tender to administration.
Are y'all ready to do that, or did you want to take some time to get me a copy so you can kind of noodle it over and
There's
then?
not a big rush on it, I will say that, because,
No.
I mean,
We have time if we want it, or we can move forward onto it. Jody, you can quiet, what do you think?
I say we look at it.
You want to look at it a little bit longer? Okay. Murray, you want to look at it a little longer? Okay. Do you mind if we go ahead and bring it back for next month? And okay, so I'll take it as an action item. I'll put it in a PDF format just to make it easy for.
I honestly think it still needs some work. I do. I think we did a great job of getting, you did. I mean, I shouldn't say we. I
It's a we.
I walked with her, but she did all that.
My original vote.
But still, it's just our two brains kind of walking it through. It really would be good for everybody to have some time to really put back your input.
Well,
in
would
it,
we
I think.
move things along faster if we also send it to the board to say, this is what we're working on, and do you see anything?
Well, I think we can do that. Would you like to take it back and just say, this is something the committee's working on?
Or maybe to the COA administration, maybe that's what I.
Well, Nikki is gonna have to make a presentation to the board at the January meeting. And the primary purpose of that, I'm getting pushed from other board members, what has this committee done up to now? And that's, I mean, if that's something that could be put in.
Well, sure. I mean, I think that definitely needs to be in the report.
That's the whole purpose of this, they want to know the progress that this committee's making. And so that's.
Being this is a December meeting, that doesn't leave us much time.
But we talked about it at our last meeting with Keith. He kind of outlined what that presentation would look like. So that's basically what I'm going to use, but I will add to, this is something new that we hadn't thought about.
I will take it back though, from my point of view, you're right, Leslie needs to see it, there's some work on our end that needs to.
Just so we don't surprise anybody, but it is, this I think is a big part of this advisory committee is when we find something that we need to add or subtract, how do we do it?
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Tom, growth prioritization tool evaluation.
Okay. I sent everybody, I hope, a copy of, and I don't think I sent.
I didn't get that.
Okay, does everybody have a copy? Because I have hard
When
copy.
y'all send these out, please make sure you copy Stephanie and myself,
Okay.
because we don't get them.
There.
I have a soft copy. Do we want to put it on the screen?
Okay, that's fine. I assume you don't need it.
We have this big fancy screen, let's use it.
I know it, pretty cool.
Isn't that neat?
It is neat, yeah.
So first, everybody take their big fat book and turn to page 300. And if you don't have your big fat book, there's nothing I can do to help you.
Excuse me, what section is that in?
Roy, I think it's,
Tools, it's section 9, I believe. 9 or
well, technically it's section 5, I think.
What's the page?
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you.
So you don't, yours isn't by page.
Page 300.
It's in section 5.
Page
Page
300.
300. It's just-
So, starting on page 300, there are three tools buried within the CMP. One is the growth prioritization tool, one is the amenities prioritization tool, and the other is the amenities value tool, something like that. Today, we're just going to look at the growth prioritization tool. A little bit of a background is a couple months ago, it was an agenda item, does the CMPAC want to take a look at these tools and comment on them? And we said yes. And so Nikki and I started by looking at the growth prioritization tool. Now, our overall goal really is to be a resource to staff and the board and to see if, by using these tools, whether we can, just make the best possible decisions at all times. And so, we're trying to be help and help to try to meet that overall goal. So with that, okay. The growth prioritization tool, from what we could figure out, and Nikki and I looked at it, was that it seems to be a single-purpose tool. It was really focused on if we have a new housing development, what are sort of a checklist of ideas that, do you need another copy?
Oh, okay.
Okay. One of the things that could be looked at in order to evaluate the value of this project. It doesn't seem to be really applicable in a general sense that any project that you could think of as being a growth-oriented project, it may not apply, but it's clearly focused on a new housing development. As such, it's not clear if it's ever been applied to a project or when the next time it will be applied, because I'm personally not terribly aware of a housing development as envisioned by the CMP occurring. In particular, if you look at page 301, where it says stage 2 fills the market gap, it all talks about what I term high-density housing, and I think there are a lot of barriers right now to high-density housing that would make this tool probably not applicable. The tool itself seems to evaluate whether a project is consistent with the CMP. To me, it does not try to evaluate what I would consider to be an overall global, is this a good business idea? To me, it's definitely not a substitute for a fully developed business proposal. So it's very narrow and very pointed in its focus. Okay, so that's sort of the background kind of stuff. If you look at this, and I'm not going to go over it in detail, the idea is that you have this in your hands. You can spend a month reading it, looking at it. Please comment on it. We're not going to discuss this in any detail today. So generally, as you can see from page 301 and thereafter. Using the tool itself is fairly simple. There are a bunch of line items, criteria. You either put in yes or no. If it's yes, you get 10 points, 5 points, whatever the point value is. If you put in no, you get 0. It adds it all up. The total maximum point value is 70, and basically, if you get 56 points or more, it's a high priority. If you get 42 points or more, it's medium priority. If you get or 42 to 55, it's medium. If it's below 42, then it's a low priority. Where the weights came from, where the breakpoints for high, medium, low priority came from, it's a mystery. I have no idea. That's simply what was submitted in the document. There are 4 general criteria at the high-level project location: filling a market gap, quality of life, and project costs. Okay. When Nikki and I looked at it, we pretty much agreed that a tool like this is very helpful, especially in the long term, because it encourages consistency, both in application of the tools and the line item, the criteria that you're applying. And I think that's a good thing. We go over a variety of tool weaknesses, and I guess probably the biggest weakness, or one of the bigger weaknesses, is it's not clear when it's going to be used. Because of, like I said, right now it doesn't appear that it may not be applicable for a while. There's probably a sort of a set of inherent biases in the tool itself. For one thing, the people filling it out, well, the line items themselves some of them aren't terribly clear. Whoever filling them out may have a bias towards, being positive as opposed to negative. And so, there's a certain degree of subjectivity in the line items. So ultimately, I think the line items need to be gone over one by one and try to decide, is the line item clear? Can it be made less subjective? We then make a variety of recommendations starting on page 2. And we made 12 recommendations. And I guess in summary, and I've talked about some of the points already. It's not clear when it's going to be used. It's not clear when in the process of evaluating a project when it will be used. The line items do need to be clarified. There are some duplications. It would be nice if things like what alternatives were considered could be somehow incorporated. And I think that once this thing is completed, it would be nice if there were a review process and the results were to be published. We then also make some recommendations about how to make the tool itself more efficient. Nikki, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Or?
That's good.
Okay. So I think going forward, like I said, you have the documents, hopefully, I sent it to you in email, and otherwise you have it in hard copy. And we'll discuss it more in the next meeting.
The intent of this, just as a reminder, was that this is one of the tools that's being used to support decision-making, and anything that we can do to improve the tools that because of that, will improve the ability to make good decisions is a good thing. So since this was one of the ones that was called out specifically in the CMP, that's why we decided to start there.
Right. Assuming that we come to an agreement in January and we approve this document, it's not clear what happens subsequent to that.
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie can help us with that, but I think that it would just be basically, we have some thoughts and recommendations for how we can improve this particular tool, and then circulate that to see if it makes sense, and
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely it. If you'll recommend it to be adopted.
do the official motion type of thing. Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for next month, give you a chance to review
I
it.
guess the first obvious question may be, does staff intend to use these tools?
Yes, I mean, like you said, I mean, when an opportunity arises, I mean,
Well,
and when that happens is anybody's guess.
I think this is just step one. As I mentioned, there are 3 tools. The second tool, the amenity prioritization tool, has been used,
Yeah.
so it's inherently a lot more interesting. A lot of the comments that I think we've made on the growth prioritization tool apply to the amenity prioritization tool. But I mean, right now, with respect to say Balboa, that one is active. It's in progress, and many of the comments I have about the growth prioritization tool spill over right into the amenity prioritization tool. So in terms of what's next, what I would propose is that for January, we go through the same exercise. I mean, I've already spent a fair amount of time looking at the next tool.
The amenity?
Yeah, the amenity tool. So I would say I'm happy to submit something that kind of looks like this for the next meeting, but I would ask somebody to work with me on that.
Are you guys talking through, I mean, you mentioned it, and you're right, that depending on who's filling out the tool, there may be biases that come into play. Are you talking about maybe adding some language to that effect about how and who and when, and what is the process for filling it out? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do we do it, do you have a cross-section of different people filling it out, so you get a fair representation from different points of view, that sort of thing?
Yeah, in terms of, I didn't think about that. I mean, I'm just looking at the tool pretty much, not in terms of who or how it's being filled out.
But to eliminate the bias.
Right.
Where a bias
But I mean, the only thing that I could really think about eliminating bias or maybe tamping it down is a third-party review, and it's not a review designed to catch people, but really to raise questions.
Or a large group filling it out and having it, is that? Group maybe?
No, I mean, the problem is we're very early in the process, and I still have problems with how do you interpret some of those lines. So, I mean, ultimately, to me, the value of the tool isn't what score you get, it's how does it lead to identification of the key issues that you should be discussing. Because I think in any of these projects that we're in, whether it be the pool or pickleball, you're filling out this thing with 50, 70 lines, but it oftentimes boils down to the key issues being 3 or 4 lines. So if you can identify them and say, okay, this is what it really boils down to, then you have a business discussion. The tool itself, as presented, you're taking it out of its context. And the context really is a big, long, hairy, complicated discussion about what is it that you're really trying to do. And like I said, the tool as it exists, and maybe it should just exist simply as that, is it pretty consistent with the CMP? And thinking that by filling out the tool, you're somehow taking the place of what is a much more complicated business discussion, that's just wrong.
Well, I don't think it should ever take the place. I think
Right.
it's just a tool in your tool belt. It's one thing. It's one
Right.
item that you can use in your decision making process, not the end all be all. Use this, and if it says yes, do it. I mean, I
Right.
think you can't do
Right.
that.
Stephanie, if I may, this tool is just for housing, right?
The growth prioritization tool pretty much is for new development. Yeah.
Yeah. If you feel comfortable, what is a brief, as I understand it, a developer comes to you, says, we want to buy 10 lots. What, do they sit down with you and say, we're going to build, what's that process?
Well, honestly, that's part of what I'm hoping Jody and I can sit down one day and really talk to. I mean, as it stands today, our hands are very much tied in terms of any kind of new, different development. I mean,
That's what I thought.
the entire community is developed with lots that are single-family detached, other than the townhomes that Cooper has done or whatever reserve properties that they have. Now, Cooper could sell a piece of reserve property to a group who then, depending, I don't even know 100% how it works. They could sell 30 acres, for an example, and somebody come in and subdivide that, or, right? Is that? Sure. Sure. And so then you would have a scenario like this where, there would be a new development, but it wouldn't necessarily, that's not our development. That's a development that somebody's bought land and it's zoned for.
Or so they could build an apartment
Right.
Correct.
complex. They could,
Yeah.
they could do whatever.
But
But
Talking about-
existing property, you
Okay.
could not.
But what we're talking about in helping you, I'm trying to see if this tool would help. Candid.
I think candidly, one of the things that we would love to be able to do is to take, and this is a relationship with Cooper to learn how to do it. If we were able to take lots and break them, a slightly larger lot, and maybe turn that one lot into 2 lots or 3 lots. So you had a slightly more dense neighborhood. So you're multiplying your assessments, you're generating more money, and you have a slightly different mix of housing. It's still single family, it's still attached, but it's maybe a slightly smaller lot, parcel of property, something like that. That's where we would be able to take something like this and make it come into play. So when you really kind of talk about like a little cottage quarter, a true pocket neighborhood, that would be a scenario where you would come in and try to use this. You have to, regardless, you got to go to Cooper.
Those have been very successful, by the way, right?
They're very successful all over the country. I mean, but it's a product. I mean, it works for some people. It doesn't. Some people love it, some people don't. It's everybody. There's a buyer for that, just like there's a buyer for a 5-acre parcel of land. So, but
Where I'm going with this is to say, is this something that you want this committee to focus on because you really think it'd be a help to? Yes or no?
Yes, but do I think it's a high priority? No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, not at this time.
It is not a high priority. The amenity prioritization tool would be a much higher priority.
Yeah.
For me, I would say focus on that. This is not something that we have any kind of short-term.
It's not something that we really are going to make it, but the amenity, that ties right into
Right.
our communication to the public with the understanding, and that we all can look at it and say, yeah, boy, that pool is really going to help us here, here,
Very,
here,
very.
here, here, and here.
Very important.
Got it.
Yeah.
Taking a shot at applying these tools to this new neighborhood we're building down here.
See, there you go.
No, but there's nothing different about that. It's a single-family detached house on a parcel of land that was already planted. There's nothing new or different. Literally the only thing that's different about that is it's just building at scale quicker
So this is
in
only
a more
for-
concentrated area.
This is only 4 things that are different?
Pardon?
This is only 4 things that are different?
For
This is only 4 developments that are different?
It's only for
it would
different type.
Yeah, it would be for something other than what's already existing.
So that's highly.
So I said, it's basically only if we were going to try to replat something, or if there was reserved property that Cooper brought in that was something new and different than what we have existing on a plat today.
So
Is
that
that
makes
fair,
it a
Renee? I'm saying, that's
That
how
makes
I
it a
see
low
it.
priority then, doesn't it?
It is a low priority.
Because those things are.
This growth tool is
those
not
things are
something we're
probably
going
not
to
gonna
use.
happen.
We have so much to learn, really, and like I said, I have a lot to learn from Jody, honestly, and what their plan, what their appetite is for any kind of development or change in parcels, that sort of thing. I mean, they still control all that. So, yeah.
Nikki, let's take a break.
Yes, it is time to take our break. All right, can we take our, let's see, clock says, I'm seeing a shadow. What time is it?
2:28.
2:20?
28.
2:28. I hate odd numbers. Can we
2:30.
make it
2:35.
2:35? Take 7 minutes instead of 5. Ready? Where's Pam?
I think she got to get her book.
She went to go get her book? Okay, there was one thing that Tom wanted to finish up.
Yeah. I'm looking for a volunteer to assist me with the review of the amenities prioritization tool, which should be far more exciting than the growth prioritization tool.
You know, the new folks are just formality. I feel comfortable with them.
There could be an opportunity there.
I'll help you out with it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Way to go.
Okay, good.
You said it was gonna be fun, so.
You're in.
Tom's buying.
Welcome.
There you go. Okay, we're going to do something new that we haven't done before. We're actually going to start taking a look at the CMP, and I thought the beginning is always a great place to start. So we're going to do the introduction today. I think that there's a couple of things. I think one of the things is we could take a look at it in terms of, hey, this was written in April of 2018. Here we are in December of 2019, practically 2020. So taking a look at it in terms of what we know now versus what we knew then. And then the other thing is that we can evaluate it and see if in a future version of it, if we were going to make any changes, what would we change, what would we add, clarify, et cetera. So I was going to do it as kind of an exercise and get us into small teams and then take about 10 to 15 minutes to go through it and then get together each little... we have 9?
Yes.
9 people, maybe groups, and then if y'all want, I think, well, I don't know about getting you involved at this point. But triads, get into 3s, and I was thinking to split up Stephanie, Buddy, and myself, 1 per every 3. Get a spokesperson who will report back whatever you came up with. So the discussion questions I have on these forms, I'm going to give one to each of you. The first one is take a look at the introduction topics, and at the highest level, what do you think needs to be there, included, not included? And I had the different sections out so that you can make keep, change, remove type of things, just kind of a thought-provoking thing. And then the second question is, did you find any other typos other than the 3 that I found? Kind of your hunt exercise to see if you saw that. I will say that I did cheat because spell checker is a wonderful thing. And the third thing was the graphic that's on page 10 and 11, spend a little time there. And one of the things that I did was I tried to come up with some definitions of what each of those bubbles is, the primary bubbles, and I wanted y'all to take a look at it. Do you agree, disagree? Think of some tweaks that may need to be necessary. That's what I was looking for. Clear as mud? Glad. Okay, so these go this way.
What page are you starting on?
Well, go ahead and start on page 8. Oh, there you go. Finally, we'll
You
get
know,
out.
they could just stand up and walk over.
You know, that would be so much easier. All right. So let's see. Clint, Jody, you want to work together with you? Buddy, you want to work with them? And then why don't we put Rolland, Tom, Stephanie, you want to work with them? And then I'll work with Pam and Murray. And it's now 20 till, so can we take 10 minutes at 10 till, kind of synthesize what your thoughts are, and then we'll have a discussion, and then by 3 o'clock we should be pretty close to done. And I don't, since this is a first time doing this, I don't know if it's reasonable we can do it. If we need only get to a certain point, and then we have to say pause and we'll go into the next meeting and do it in January, that is perfectly fine too. So let's just, this is a first attempt, and I don't know how this is going to work, so we'll just see. I'll be over here.
Oh,
I'm
you're
on top.
telling me about that.
I'm working with you, Heau.
You can see here, I'll go around and share.
You guys have one?
I have a sneaking suspicion what you
Okay, let's see. Cheat sheet. I'm gonna look over your shoulder at your nose.
So let's see how this all works out. The first
What are
one
we
is,
supposed to do?
their general comments, so we're going to look at the CEO. So I have a list here. So I want you to read over those and say, we're going to do another reminder. For example, the planning team that
Well, of course, the chairman is changed.
The problem with things like that is that
There needs to be a
there
message.
may be a different person in different roles very frequently, and you're,
I think
I
it's
would say
important.
this.
This is, this is,
The CEO will do it.
maybe what if they want, if the CEO changes, they want to reevaluation.
Well, the other thing is that
I need to keep this backwards. I mean, it started off at 2017. Bidding,
The bubble chart?
why, how did we get here? And that's something keep kept
chairman,
going over and over.
that's what I give as a chairman.
So, I think it needs to
I
be
guess
kept.
what this does,
Actually, I guess it needs to be kept. That's my vote.
it's what they consider.
No, this was actually, this was created in-house. This was not part of the.
Summary and draft.
We all kind of worked.
I think that's this right here.
To get
That's the vote.
to have a vision of who all was influencing this
If you remember,
document, all of the different.
I think it's correct.
I see this as a document that's really for service, execution, vision,
the first time I ever saw border charts in a city college was Twiggs. He did something very similar. I think the general idea is sound, which is, this is a very messy, complicated issue. Sure, of course. If you got nothing else,
That's a kind of,
yeah.
it sort of shows you how big
Yeah,
a
that's
message
my
it is.
point.
He says this is a very complex.
That's right. And if that's your only
5
message,
years
and you
from now,
got that, I'm
this
happy.
document is going to
If you're going to get more detail,
old and out of date.
my section, and what's really key
It will be
is,
important.
in order to do this, we have to do some we've got all kinds of character issues. Leadership in any organization is just horribly important. What I started to do is say,
I mean,
these should be big
And the board mission, vision, and values, I think they do that high.
So maybe it's just, to be
Experience
no, it
is
doesn't.
that
Well,
You doing all right?
I think so.
Good.
But
Good.
Yeah.
I'm doing good.
I'm wrong.
So in terms of
This
staying
does
or
not
going,
drive
I think
any
maybe
decision
innovative
making.
with it.
in going over this, I think communication idea.
I think it has to do with the screens,
Everything needs to do that.
the high definition screens. They don't pick up on the areas, they blur everything.
So the next one is
They're 2014.
Right, because it's reflecting on it, yeah, mine does that too. Yeah. A screenshot, yeah. Well, you ever need a screenshot, most everybody has that presentation on, and they could send you like a slide or me.
I would scale the bubbles. And once you get down to the third level, this is the
Okay, that's fine.
this is the second level. Once you get down to the third level, forget it.
I'd say,
Wow. Yeah, it has something to do with the screens afterwards.
Well, for people like me, what are you trying to do with that challenge?
I think intellectual capital, I think it does.
you changed it, there needs to be, you need to go to
Together to get good ones sold
define what it's
good
really
houses.
A lot of them are.
No
Well, that's the first thing you should figure out before you decide to publish. But then again, like I said, I don't, to me, it's not key.
But that was something that really struck me.
I mean,
I wouldn't even want to
I mean,
have
if you look at financial
this
statements,
somewhere else.
there's
I
only
want
two bubbles
this
in here.
within this bubble.
There's really-
So somehow.
I mean, your fees and PO assessments, all that other stuff today is life-based. Everything else here, they have some.
That's good, at least you're.
Well, and you. Why didn't you fix
Something like that.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, to say that education has the same weight as financial
Well,
is
like.
ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
That means it has.
But you see that in other things that the planning team did. They did the word searches, and then some words were like that.
That's right, because those were the ones that were very frequently, right?
It did not. This is the opportunity.
Do you think it, I mean, I don't think you should ever give it back.
This is the opportunity.
I
It
just-
benefits all of us.
I mean, it benefits all of
And
us.
why should I care?
If we
And this is
want
the
to
why
start
of the
debating
master plan.
This is that part.
Okay,
So he should, and,
I'm a Georgia, so.
Not that I'm aware of, like, issues as a.
We're not gonna get back into that. I'm telling you, right? We'll develop all you want, but I don't want to over and over. I am not going
at
to.
some point, they should.
For sure, I think.
We'll lay
What
it out.
about the steering committee also? That's a.
Well,
Goes for-
Yeah, because we
You'll
can't
bring
speak
in
to
other,
that.
yourself to developers?
With the steering committee, I mean, it's already
I don't do
gone.
anything to her,
I'm
so.
wondering whether or not it still needs to be here.
Yeah, I mean,
And the same,
Always the
and the
same.
same.
Tom Hale's pet peeve is one of my biggest pet peeves about Hot Springs Village. That vision statement fails the definition of a vision statement. It is not a vision statement. Period.
Or
And
how we sell to somebody.
I would change that. When I had a chance to input, I told them that is not a vision
Can
statement.
you give me your card, Miss Lady?
Right.
Sure, I
understand
Right.
The person who was
Right.
training,
What do we want to grow up?
Yeah, the values thing have always been squishy on this. I don't know. The vision statement is just.
But just in general,
Oh,
is this
yeah.
important? I'd say.
40 years.
So the only other changes during the planning.
I think you gotta get it, but something at some point.
okay.
I'm hearing you talk about this. We talked over something.
Well, it's not only a board, you can do as a former consultant.
The board.
Not to be confused with
I just can't stand it.
Changed, updated.
I would keep, but I would put us in there.
I went to the doctor's office.
Oh, so keep and change.
I would put,
The nurse
I
came
mean,
out.
now,
Yes,
where
that's
are
fairly stable, but
the,
they're making.
Yeah, right, that would be good. I would change it.
I'm sitting over here.
There was a diamond.
You're right.
That's one last thing. What about this next meeting, vision and
like, we just another paragraph. And basically whatever our charter.
And when she passed away, my husband began.
Take one final minute to kind of summarize where you have so far. If you didn't finish, I understand.
Yeah. What,
I don't know.
And the CMP goal,
does that help?
I saw that.
And many people.
No, it doesn't. It's nothing.
It's just one letter different.
It's really good.
That's one after that.
I understand that too.
Okay.
She's got an issue.
It is really just a story.
Certain things need to be.
Yes, ma'am.
The graphic is not known as trans.
Can we-
Edition.
can we go back? Can we go back to this stuff? The easy vision statements, they are what they are. At what point do we talk about this? Because when I look at that, the 18
It's not.
goals. And when I look at them, I feel pretty comfortable in saying, we got that, we got that. And some of them I look at and say, I'm not so comfortable with that goal is actually fulfilled. I don't think it needs to be the goal.
Yes, I
But
Yeah.
right. Yeah, what I'm saying is probably jumping. But it's something for this to think about.
Okay, let's do it that way.
How are we doing?
It does not belong.
It's a start. It's a start. Okay, that's great.
You know you're gonna get worked out.
Don't
Yes, he has to lift
forget
weights,
your
now
buddy
shouldn't have to go to the
got-
gym.
Carrying chairs around.
Clint, what we got?
Okay.
We
All right.
didn't elect this.
Okay, so for their little threesome? Okay. All right.
We forgot to elect.
Okay, so first of all, from a process point of view, does this have value? From a team perspective?
This exercise.
Yes. Does it have value?
Yes,
Okay, good. Is it something you'd like to repeat?
it's something.
With more time,
Go into
obviously?
A little more depth on.
Yeah, with more time? Okay, then we'll allot more time. I apologize, I should do better time management, and I don't want to keep y'all any later than I absolutely have, but next time in the agenda, we will allow more time and we'll get a little farther. But I think as a working session, it was valuable. All right, Clint, your team, what did, I'm pointing to you, but if you're not the team lead, let me know.
I'll start if Buddy jumps in. We think keeping the message from the chairman is a good idea to keep the history. In fact, most of this, it's important, we feel, for the history to be there to understand, hey, way back in 2017, and as we look at it over the years, this is what the thinking and needs were at that time.
Okay.
The CMP summary and graphic that needs to be updated, background of the Hot Springs Village, that needs to stay. Why a comprehensive plan, that's very important. As we've talked about it many times before, failing to plan is planning to fail. Board of Directors mission, that needs to be updated. CMP steering committee goals and objectives, of course. I mean, that, we're a big part of moving this forward. The 18 visioning statements and desired outcome map, really couldn't see that was very helpful. So, I'm not too sure about that. But everything else we think needs to be in there updated. That's it.
Okay. Any additional changes or comments that you found as you're going through it?
No, not really.
Okay, good. How about y'all?
Okay. Team members, please chime in because
But
I don't have any notes.
Oh, I've got notes.
Oh, no. I want you to chime in. Okay. Message from the chairman. We said the section should keep, but every year it would probably be appropriate if the new chairman would have a message should they desire.
Okay.
The same with the CEO. Every year to comment on the status of the outlook of the CMP. Message from the planning team, keep, no changes. The graphic and summary, we said keep the overall graphic, but perhaps consider some changes to it. I think we talked about the equal-sized bubbles implying equal importance, and maybe the bubbles might be resized, maybe in order of priority or impact or importance or something like that. But it wasn't exactly clear what you're trying to convey with the chart.
Okay.
Background of Hot Springs Village, keep. Why a comprehensive plan, keep. Board of Direction, vision of values, keep that one. And I'm going to put in a personal advertisement. The vision statement does not meet the definition of a vision statement. It should be changed, if for no other reason, so that it actually passes the definition of a vision statement. CMP Steering Committee Goals and Objectives, you can keep that, but we thought it would be appropriate to put in the new and powerful CMP Advisory Committee as an ongoing part of that process. CMP goals, keep 18 visioning statements, keep, and the CMP planning process.
Okay,
We should keep that.
good. All right. I was nominated to report out for our team. One of the things that we were talking about at 50,000 foot level, and Renee hinted at this, was that if we were going to publish a new one, they would always at least print one copy to go into the archive, so we'll have a history of it. So from that point of view, it does give us the freedom that we don't necessarily have to keep absolutely everything that's in this document in all future documents. We could always refer it back to the other one. And one way we could do that is by having an addendum in the back of this that says, per this version, check out whichever edition or previous version if they wanted to have more information on that. And that gives us the permission to do this. Because I've worked on documents like this that grow, and the first one is this big, and by the 5 years, 10 years later, you're into something that is encyclopedic in size, and we don't necessarily want to do that. We did talk about the same kind of thing about keeping the various different ones, possibly updating it. The graphic itself, Pam brought up the point that it really, I think one of the values that I really got from the relationship with Patricia being here was she was always saying, hey, is this in layman's terms? And I think that we could do something in terms of restructuring this in such a way that it is in layman's terms and understand it, because we don't necessarily have any definitions here. And maybe by adding some definitions, we can improve what the concept is and what we're trying to meet there. The visioning statements, this is something that forms the basis and kind of does the mapping for all future things. You'll see those numbers in every section that moves forward. So there is, on the following pages after the 18 visioning statements, literally what that cross mapping is. I think that those we probably do need to put a request in to have the board or staff, who are appropriate, review those. Are those still applicable? Do we need to add any, change some, remove some, whatever? It's been 2 years since they were written. There's probably a good logic to go ahead and confirm that they are, because it is the mapping for everything past this point. If that changes, obviously there's going to have some significant changes downstream on other parts as well. Did I miss anything, Tim?
Just on the why a comprehensive plan,
Oh, please do.
you missed a great opportunity to sell. Why is this plan, what's in it for me? Why is it important to me? They totally missed that. And it'd be great, I think, to have that in there.
Especially now that we know where a little bit more information about where some of the pain points are in terms of why some people are resisting it, don't like it, etc. Maybe we could just go ahead and flat out address some of those points. Better to have it in a factual document than rumor mill somewhere out there. Okay, anything else?
It's 3 o'clock.
That's gonna go in the frequently
Entertain
asked
a
questions.
motion to adjourn.
Almost. I'm sorry, what?
Is that going to go in frequently asked questions too?
Possibly. We have, the last thing we have on any agenda is the comments from any guest. So, any comments from any, assuming this dialogue is done. Are we done with this conversation? Yes? No?
What's next?
What's next in terms of this?
Yeah.
I will document all this and kind of synthesize all of our thoughts so we have it as a comprehensive. We didn't necessarily get 100% through. I'd like to go ahead and do that. I think the next step is that moving forward, if you like this as including it into it, let's give it a bigger portion of our agenda so we can take some more time with it. And let's rotate around who's going to be the facilitating board. Come up with the discussion questions for each one of that. I think that would, everybody, if you have a passion for a particular area, why don't you
There's
volunteer
one
for that
thing,
section?
I think we've got to stick to the time limits, especially for those that are traveling.
Yes. Yes. I did not do as good a job as I wanted to on my time management today.
We're still good.
We're good.
Okay.
There's that 5 minutes that we took off, but, whew.
That makes all the difference.
5 after.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference. Thanks, Murray.
Because
All
I think
right.
Buddy's not going to, so motion to adjourn?
Only if we have comments
Hold on,
from.
Let me say 2 things. If you look at your calendars, your January meeting comes up really quick. It's January, The board meeting is on the 15th, which means I guess y'all meet on the 11th. So need to look at the calendar. Don't you meet the second Friday?
Is that the 10th?
That's the 11th. Well, that's the 10th. I'm sorry. That's the 10th. You might think about having a work session
Okay,
prior to that meeting.
okay.
I just offer that as a suggestion.
Okay, I'll circulate that by emails and see if there's any reason why we couldn't do that, especially for the people who are traveling from out of town. As long as we give you enough time, I hope we can make that work.
We can do a Skype meeting out of the conference room. We don't have to necessarily do it like
That
this.
is a
We
possibility.
do that. It's just,
Yeah, it'd be
like
so.
Buddy stated, we've got Christmas coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 2 weeks there
Exactly.
that are gonna be taken out,
And,
basically.
and you know, not just for this committee, but for other committees as well. It'd be so great if we could figure out a way to actually use technology, to leverage technology so that people don't have to travel so far and their schedules don't have to be turned upside down.
True.
I'm gonna be here from the 20th on through January 3rd. So if you got one of me,
I'm gonna be with her.
Jody, that's so unfair.
Well,
Okay, so
wait, we could all just go there.
Yeah,
We'll have a meeting there.
oh, if only I knew.
Make a note of that, please.
Okay,
The
next,
location has changed.
I think Cheryl has it.
Cheryl, yes.
Are you scrapping the SWAT idea?
We took that out of the agenda for today, mostly from a time point of view. We're going to have to revisit that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just-
I'm going to learn
I
this.
just
and look
wondered
at- yes.
because it seemed to be such a controversy.
Yeah, and we're just going to have to figure that one out. So, but for time purposes, we knew that we were going to run long today, so I wanted to go ahead and remove that from the agenda for today.
Are you
But-
thinking about removing it permanently?
No.
You would have to redo your charter, right?
No, our charter says we have to do 4, so we will be doing them. It's just a question of how we're going to do them. So, and when. I mean, we just have to figure it out. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, Clint,
Motion to adjourn.
second. All approved?
Saying anything?
Aye.
That was it?
Okay. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.